This is Gemara Megillah Daf Hey. Again, a very warm welcome to all the newcomers to the Daf. Mirz Hashem, we should continue learning together day after day of the learning for this month. The month of Tevis has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf, L'Zichron Nishmas, his father, of Aryeh Ben Rav Yaakov Zatzal. Learning the entire Chabura should be a tremendous chos ilin neshama, as of Aryeh is Ayla to a higher and higher place in Gan Eden Shalom Ayla. Of course, all the learning should as well be as Chashidach Chlisochaim Devarim Shemir Masig Zegidol Zaynasa B'Shanamak Lemar Davshin Zegidol B'Stavshin as well as Chus for Shleim Shlomo Yevzben and the Freda Mani Vega Chaim and Salar Shalom Zim Reizedos Herbas Knendel Ita Basiam Bas Chay Yisrael yourself Mendel Yezer prior to the Shalei Shalom as Naomi V'Shavig Shir Chana Shmob until Din V'Chan Reizim V'Chay Basmina Dinena V'Shen Mendel Siva Vega V'Erna V'Chil Zibur Nazdel Huva Rivka V'Shem Tazim V'Chlas V'Say Shar Chayle Yisrael holding in the bottom of Dalid Amid Beis. And again, a tremendous thank you to all of those that have been spreading the Torah, gathering people to join the Daf, and a tremendous chos that we should all continue to be learning together day after day. So we're in the middle of discussing why we do not read the Megillah on Shabbos. So yesterday we said 5 lines to the bottom, the opinion of Rabba, the more famous opinion perhaps, that the reason is we're afraid that someone might come to carry his Megillah so that to be taught how to learn the Megillah, and we said that's the same reason by Shofar and Lulav. But comes along the Gemara today, Rav Yosef Amar, 3 lines to the bottom, and he teaches us a second reason why you do not learn the Megillah on Shabbos, because the Aniyim, the poor people's eyes, are looking forward to the Megillah because then they know they're going to get Matanas Lev Yainim, another one of the mitzvahs aparim. And if we lane on Shabbos, you can't give Matanas Lev Yainim on Shabbos. So that's the second reason we do not lane on Shabbos. Even though the Kfarim read early on Monday and Thursday, still they collect the gifts of the poor on the day that they read on that Monday or Thursday, and they distribute it again because the Aniyim are looking forward to Mikra Megillah. Afal Pisha Amru, ask the Gemara, what did you just say? You just said even though they read early on Monday and Thursday, still we collect the money on Monday and Thursday. That's not Afal Pisha Amru. Adrabah, Mishonda Amru. It should say because they read early, therefore they collect the money early. Says Gemara, you're right. Elohayel va'amru. Ella, rather, Hayel, since they read early on Monday and Thursday, why? In the last line, they Shalaneim, because the Aniyim are waiting for Mikra Megillah. Just to point out, last year here in Eretz Yisrael, this had a tremendous nafkamina as this line of the Gemara. Last year was a Purim Masholosh, as they called. The Purim fell out on Shabbos. So one of the reasons why we do not lay in the Megillah on Shabbos, we just learned, was because of Matanas Lev Yainim. And now we learned another halacha, that any day that you read the Megillah, that's the day that you're going to do Matanas Lev Yainim. And last year, the Megillah was read on a Purim Masholosh here in Eretz Yisrael was Thursday night, Friday morning, the night of the 14th and the 14th, and therefore those were the same times. Friday was the time for Matanas Lev Yainim, because again, Matanas Lev Yainim always goes hand in hand with Mikra Megillah. Says the Gemara as we turn over to today's Daf, Hey Amud Aleph Aval. However, turning over to Hey Amud Aleph, Simcha, the mitzvah of Simcha. What's the mitzvah of Simcha? The Tab Rashi explains, Meichel Mishta, this is the mitzvah of the Su'uda of Purim, Einoy Neheges Ela Bismano. Even though we bump up the Megillah, and when we bump up the Megillah, we bump up Matanas Lev Yainim. But the Su'uda is always in the right time. The Su'uda does not change. Amar Rav comes like Rav, and Rav teaches us Megillah Bismano Karinoy Safilu Biyachan. Another halacha that was relevant last year here. The Megillah in the right time, says Rav, to be read even Biyachid. You don't need a minion to lay in the Megillah. You're allowed to lay in it even biyachid. But shaloi bizmana, says Rav, when you're laying in the Megillah not at the right time, as Rashi points out, like the Kfarim that are bumping it up a day, ba'asara, you need to have 10 people to lay in the Megillah. That's Rav. Rav Asi Amar, no, ben bizmana, ben shloi bizmana asara, whether it's the right time or whether it's an earlier date, you always need to have A minion of 10 people. Now look at Rashi, a very important Rashi. Rashi points out in the second arrow line, mitzvah lachzor acher chazar mishum persumi nisa. Says Rashi, it's a mitzvah to have 10. But says Rashi, let's say you cannot have 10, then you're still allowed to read the Megillah with less than 10. It's just a mitzvah to have 10. And again, this was relevant last year. Another one of the practical ramifications. When you're laying the Megillah not at the right time last year, because again, the 15th was Shabbos, we're laying the Megillah here in Eretz Yisrael on Friday, is what do? We try to have a minion of 10, even for a woman, one of the big practical ramifications. However, Allah Lamaisa, we baskin Rabbi Yitzchak and Zanefeld, the minig Yushalayim, was that if you don't have 10, you're still allowed to lay in the Megillah for the woman, etc. And now we understand where that came from, as we see Rashi says, it's a mitzvah, but if you don't have it, you still can lay in the Megillah. Says the Gemara, 4 lines down, there was a story, and Rav was suspectful for this opinion of Rav Asi, meaning, Rashi says, he went to look for 10 people. Asked the Gemara, does Rav really concur with the opinion of Rav Asi? Rav Yehuda, Breit Rav Shmuel, Bar Shil's Mishvei de Rav. Parshas Chaldias b'Shabbos. Erev Shabbos zmanim. Says the Gemara, Purim falls on Shabbos. Erev Shabbos is the right time. Erev Shabbos zmanim or Shabbos zmanim? What does that mean? Of course, Shabbos is the zman. Who? Ella explains the Gemara, no, this is what I meant. Ella lav achi gomer. Shaloi bizmanam kizmanam. That's what the statement was. That on Friday, it's like the right zman. Ma zmanam afilu biyachid, av shaloi bizmanam afilu biyachid. So says the Gemara, why did you just tell me that Rav went looking for 10 people? We said a statement over the name of Rav. Excuse me, that shaloi bizmanam is like bizmanam. There's no difference, that you don't need a minion of 10. So why was Rav looking for 10? Answers the Gemara, it's not with regard to reading the Megillah with 10 people. Elamai, Erev Shabbos Zman. What did Rav mean when he said that Erev Shabbos is the right time? Lafuki mid Rebbe, to teach us not like Rebbe that we learned yesterday. Rebbe said once you push it off, you push it all the way off to Thursday. Rav is teaching us that no, Friday is the right time. Do not push it all the way back to Thursday, but rather Friday is the right time. However, with regards to having a minyan, Rav is of the opinion that one should lechatchila try to have a minyan. One should try to have a minyan on Friday. Says the Mishnah, is a year Gedayla. What is a large city? Kol shish ba'asara batzlanim. Like we learned yesterday, that you have to have 10 people unoccupied at any moment, sitting in shul and learning. Less than that is a village which of course we've learned many times is allowed to read earlier on the day of assembly on the Yom HaKnisa, Monday and Thursday. With the following halachos, we go early and not late, like we just said, Mikra Megillah. But other halachos, when it comes to the time of bringing the wood for the Kehanim, like we learned in the Gemara in Tainis very recently, Daf Chavches, a few days ago, that we learned that there were families that had special times to bring the wood for the Mizbeach, and V'Tishabav, and V'Chagiga, and Hakel. Those 4 mitzvahs, Ma'achrim V'lei Makdimim. We don't do early, we push them off late. Aval Bish Amru Makdimim, even though they said that we make the Megillah earlier, V'lei Ma'achrim, and we don't postpone it, still, Mutarim B'Esed U'Tainis still, one is allowed to do a Espedim and Tainis on that earlier day that you read the Megillah. So for example, when they read the Megillah on the previous Thursday, they're allowed to have a Espedim on that day. A statement that we've seen already. Says Rabbi Yehuda, when do we bump up the Megillah to Monday and Thursday? When they would go into the larger towns on Monday and Thursday. Then they only read it in the appropriate time. So the Mishnah began that what's an ear is 10 people sitting and learning, and then we segue to other areas of halacha that we don't make it earlier, but rather we postpone it later. And we concluded with Dinam of the Megillah that when you make it earlier, but on that earlier date you're still allowed to have a spedim, etc. Says the Gemara, Tana Asara Batzlanish of Vesak, and that means 10 people sitting and learning in shul. What is the reason that when it comes to Megillah, we read it earlier and not late? Amar Rav Abba, Amar Shmuel, 2 lines for the wide lines. Amar Kra, V'lo Ya'avar. As we've seen already, you do not postpone the Megillah. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Shmuel, Minayin Shein Moinim Yamin L'Shana. Another halacha, actually this is a Gemara that we've seen quite recently. Says Rav Abba Shmuel, again, just another statement of his because he's talking on the first white line. From where do we see that we count days to calculate a year? What does that mean? We count the year by months and not by days. What does that mean? As Rashi over here points out, Rashi, in the 3 lines into the white lines, points out that if someone makes a neder for 1 year, we do not count 365 days. Rather, we go 12 months day to day, even though it's 11 days earlier. Similar halacha, when it comes to a month, someone says, I'm going to give you a get if I don't come within a month's time. How do we know we do not count hours for a month, but rather we count days? Says the month of days. And therefore, even though a month is 29 and a half days, says Rashi, someone says, if I don't come within a month, he has a full day, because a month is counted by days, just like a year is counted by months. And we continue in the Gemara, 4 lines into the Y lines, listing the items of the Mishnah that we said we postpone and do not do like Megillah and read early. And these are things that we postpone. Says the Gemara, you know why we don't do Tisha B'Av earlier? Because punishments we never do earlier. We always want to push off punishments. It's not their time yet. It's not the time for the Karban Chagiga, so we can't bring it yet. Tana, we learned in a Mishnah, Chagiga, the Karban Chagiga, the Karban of Yantiv, V'chol Zman Chagiga, and anything which is the time of the Chagiga, Machrin you push off. Interesting Mishnah. Now the Gemara tries to explain this cryptic Mishnah. I understand what the Mishnah meant, that the Chagiga you push off, that when it falls out on Shabbos, you don't bring the Karban of Yantiv on Shabbos, you push it off to after Shabbos. What exactly did the Mishnah, the Brisa mean when it said the time of the Chagiga? What was that referring to? So multiple answers. Amar Rav Aishia, answer number 1, Achi Kamar. Chagiga b'Shabbos. Let's say the Chagiga falls on Shabbos, you push it off. The Oilas Re'iyah, which is the Karban of Yantif, the Oila that you bring for being Oila Regel, Afilu b'Yantif Dizman Chagiga me'achrin. Even on Yantif you don't bring that, because an Oila you don't bring on Yantif because you don't eat it. You only bring Karbanas that you eat on Yantif. So that Karban you push off even past the time of the Chagiga. Mani, whose opinion is that? It's Beishami. It's not Beishami. Oimrim Mevim Shlamim b'Yantiv. Only Shlamim you're allowed to bring on Yantiv because you eat it. You don't bring a Karban Oila. Beisil argues, and he says Mevim Shlamim b'Oila Seim Chanaleim. So Teretz number 1, what did the Brisa mean by Zman Chagiga? The Zman Chagiga was really referring to the Oilas Re'iyah. Teretz number 2 had to learn up the Brisa. Rav Amar, 6 lines from the bottom of the Amid. Rava says, Chagiga v'chol zman Chagiga ma'achrin. Tfei loy. All the Brisa meant was that you could push off the Chagiga, the time of the Chagiga of the Yontif, but now more than the Yontif. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah that we've seen in the past, Mishal Chag b'Yontif or Rishal Chag, someone who forgot to bring the Karban on the first day of Yontif, Chagig v'Hailich as Kol Regel Kula, you could bring it the entire Yontif, the Yontif Achron Shal Chag, and the final day of Yontif, you're allowed to bring it as well. Avar Regel, it's too late, you can't bring anything. So the second opinion is what the Mishnah meant by the Zman was that the Karban Chagiga you have the entire time of the Yontif and no more. Teretz number 3, Rav Ashi Amar Chagiga v'chol zman Chagiga me'achrin. Know what the Brisa meant? The Brisa meant that when it's on Shabbos, the Karban Chagiga is postponed, and any time the Karban that we're speaking of, Afilu Atzeres, the Chad Yoim Machrin, even Shavuos, even a Zman that's only 1 day you push off. The Tnan, Moedim Shimchal Atzeres Lios B'Shabbos, Shvuos Shvuos on Shabbos, Shem Tavuach Achar HaShabbos, you push it off even after Shabbos. So again, the third way of explaining what I mean by the Zman, that it goes by the time that even though you only have 1 day of Shvuos, you push it off even after Yontif. Says the Gemara, let's go a little bit deeper into that which we push off, into Din of Tisha B'Av. Omar Rav Elazar, Omar Rav Chanina, Rebbe Says Rav Elazar and Rav Chanina, an interesting statement. Rebbe planted a planting on Purim. Interesting. And we turn over to him and Beis, and the Brisa continues by telling over what Rebbe did. And on Shavasar B'Tammuz, another fast day, he bathed in the marketplace. And number 3, Ubikish Lakar Tishbav, he wanted to uproot Tishbav. The Chacham did not admit him. So 3 interesting practices of Rebbe. He planted something on Purim, he bathed on Shavasar B'Tammuz, he wanted to get rid of Tishbav. The Chachamim were not masking. Amr Lefanav Avar Razavda, Rebbe lo kacha yamaisa. He said, no, that's not really what happened. You got it wrong. Let me tell you what really happened. Ela Tishbav Shchaliyos B'Shabbos wasn't a regular Tishbav. You don't want to get rid of Tishbav. It was when Tishbav fell on Shabbos, Havei Udachenu Lachar Shabbos, and it was pushed off to Sunday. V'amar Rebbe Hoyel V'Nidched Yidched. Rebbe said, this year, the year when Tishbav is Shabbos, and it's actually this year. Tishbav is a Nidched this year. Hopefully we won't have it. Hopefully the words of Rebbe will come true. Since it's pushed off, says Rabbi, it should be pushed off. But the Chachamim did not agree with Rebbe. Why not? Karu alei. And Rav Abba bar Zavda said when he heard this statement, the way to explain this din of Rebbe, Tovim Shnayim and Echad, 2 is better than 1, meaning this explanation is really what happened, that because Tishbav was Shabbos, that's when Rebbe wanted to push it off. Now let's go back to the 3 things Rebbe did. Number 1, he planted a planting on Purim. Number 2, he took a bath on Shavasar B'Tammuz. And number 3, we just dealt with Tishbav was Shabbos, and he wanted to push it off entirely. Let's go back to din number 1. For Rebbe, how did Rabbi plant on Purim? Vatani Rabbi Yossi Simcha Mishtav Yomtiv. What did Rav Yosef explain? Simcha Mishtav Yomtiv, says the pasuk. Simcha refers to Melami Shasurim Bas. You're not allowed to have a spade on Purim. Mishtav Melami Shasur B'Tainis. You're not allowed to fast on Purim. V'Yomtiv Melami Shasur Basi is Malacha. You're not allowed to do Malacha. Planting is Malacha. Answers the Gemara, you're right. El Rebbe bar Arbeisa Have. Rebbe was one that held Purim was on the 14th. So for contemporary terms, we'll call it Rebbe lived in Bnei Brak. Of course, Purim there is celebrated on the 14th. And then we'll say Yerushalayim is where it's 15th. So Rebbe bar Arbeisa Have. Rebbe lived in Bnei Brak. And he planted on the 15th. And the 15th is not Purim. We could call it New York for the same money. The 14th is Purim and the 15th is nothing. So that's when he planted. Frak the Gemara, Aini, is that true? But Rabbi B'Tiveria Ave. Rabbi was in Tiveria. B'Tiveria Mukavas Chamim Yeshua ben Nun Avai. And Tiveria really had a wall all the way back from Yeshua, meaning they celebrated Purim on the 15th. So how do you plant a planting? Rabbi Bar Chameser Ave says, Gemara, you're right. Really, Rabbi held Purim was on the 15th. Chinata Bar Beis Ave. And when did he plant? On the 14th. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Me Pashidale, this very Mukavas Chamim Yeshua ben Nun. Is it Pashid? Is it symbol that Tiveria has a wall all the way back from the days of Yeshua ben Nun? Chizkiah would read on the 14th and the 15th in the Tiveria. You know why? Mesavkele, he wasn't sure. He lied. So what's going on? How can you tell me Rebbe held the Purim is only the 15th? Answers the Gemara. The Rebbe Pshitale. Rebbe knew it was only the 15th. Chizkiah was unsure. 20 lines down. First one in line is Lei. Ask the Gemara. Mishari. And you're right. So it's Pashit. Rebbe held Purim is the 15th in Tveria. But ask the Gemara still Mishari. Was Rebbe allowed to plant something on the 14th? V'aksiv Megillah Tainis. Something that we quoted in the Gemara in Tainis a few weeks ago. It says in the Megillah of Tainis, as Yom Arba Asar v'es Yom Chamisha Asar, the 14th and the 15th, Yoimei Purim Inun, are the days of Purim. That what? The Loilam Mispad behind. That you're not allowed to say eulogies on it. Ve'omar Rava, and Rava explained this statement. This comes to teach us that the place where holds the 14th is also on the 15th, but he holds the 15th is also on the 14th. So what we're seeing, ask the Gemara, that it's not simple, even if he held Purim is the 15th, to do Malach on the 14th. Answers the Gemara, what are you talking about? Honey Mili, did you not just listen? That was Espedim. Malacha is only Asar on one day and no more. Ask the Gemara further, Aini, is that true? Rav saw a man who was planting flax on Purim Mulatia and he cursed him. V'loy samach, and the flax did not grow. V'lo samach kisna. Why did he curse him? Obviously, you're not allowed to do malacha. Answers the Gemara, Hasam bar Yoime Havayu was the day where that man held who was parim. That is the reason why he cursed him, but indeed it's only usher to do work on one day. Ask the Gemara, I shouldn't say ask. The Gemara now goes back to Rebbe planting on Purim, another explanation of the story. Rabba Berei de Rava Amar, a second reason that Rebbe planted on Purim, Afilu Tema B'Yoime. Really, I can tell you it was the 15th. He was in Tavaria, and he held it was Purim. Still, Haspedu Tainis Kabila Ale. Only Haspedim and Tainis are also on Purim. Malacha like Kabilu Ale. They never accepted upon themselves. That is also do Malacha on Purim. The Meikar Ksiv, originally it says, Simcha Mishta V'Yamtif. Ulebsaif Ksiv, and at the end of the Megillah it says, Lasis Aisam, Yemei Mishta V'Simcha. It first says Simcha Mishta Yantif, then it says Mishta and Simcha, leaving out Yantif. Vilu Yantif like Siv, it does not say Yantif. And therefore, for there they learned that they never accepted upon themselves that there's an Isser to do Malacha on Purim. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If there's no Isser to do Malacha, so why did Rav curse that man? You don't know there's no Isser to do Malacha. Answers the Gemara, there were people that had a minhag, they did accept upon themselves as aser. Place of Rebbe, they did not accept it, but in the place of Rav, they did accept it. So in Rav's place, because they accepted it, you're not allowed to do work, Rav cursed the person who was planting. Really, they did indeed have this iser. Rebbe Netiya shel simcha nata, and Rebbe planted a planting of simcha. What does that mean? And this is the reason why it was allowed. Again, even though their minhag was not to work, still Rebbe planted. Why? Because it was Netiya of simcha. What's that? Gemara and Tainis, like we just learned. Get it tanan of Reilav loinenu. If these fast days passed and they were not answered, they stopped doing business. They stopped building and planting. They stopped having engagements and weddings. Tanya along we explained what's a building of simcha, Netiya shel simcha. And the Gemara there explained in the first white line, Ezu binin shel simcha is that boine beis chatznas l'benai, you build a house for your son who gets married. Ezu netiya shel simcha is that notia avarnaki shel malachim, this planting of kings. And if you remember back from the Rashi in Gemara and Tainis, there were two ways of learning. Either they planted a tree for the king to relax under, or they planted a tree when the king's son was born, and when that son becomes king, they made a chair out of that tree. So why did Rebbe plant on Purim, even though his place had a custom to not do work? It was a special planting which was permitted, was an Netiya shel simcha. Let's just begin the next Gemara, going back to that which Chizkiah said. Chizkiah was misopek regarding Tiveria, whether Tiveria is celebrated on the 15th or not. Kufa on the second wide line. Chizkiah Kari b'Tiveria bar Beisar b'Chameisar. Chizkiah was unsure, so what did he do? He read on the 14th and the 15th. Why? Misavkele Mekavas Chamim was Yeshua ben Nun. He wasn't sure. Asked the Gemara, Mi Misavkele? Was he really indeed in doubt? Milsa de Tiveria? Was Chizkiah not sure about Tiveria? V'aksiv, the pasuk says, Vari mivsar atzadim sar v'chemas rekes v'kineret v'kaimelan rekes zu Tiveria. So says the Gemara, how could you not be sure? It's clear in the Psukim. Answers the Gemara, that's indeed why he's Mesopik. You know why? Because one side of Tiveria was a wall of water, and Chizkiah was unsure if a wall of water is called the walled city all the way back for the time of Yeshua ben Nun. Asks the Gemara, so what was his Safik? The Gemara turns the tables. If you're telling me that at a wall of water, and that's what we see for the Psukim, it's clearly not a wall. So what was the Safek? The Tanya is learned in a Brisa. Shaloi Chaimat says it has to have a wall. V'loi Shar Igar. It has to have a wall and not a wall of houses. Saviv around, Prala Tiveria, Yama Chaimaisel. Comes to exclude Tiveria that the Yam is the wall. So what was the suffix of Chizkiah? Clearly the water is not called the water. Answers the Gemara, you're right. With regard to a walled city, about the Yerachayma that you're allowed to buy back only your house if you sell it within 1 year, he wasn't in doubt. Why? My prazin or my mukafin dechsivi gami mikra Megillah. What did it mean with regard to mikra Megillah that there's the Prazim, the unwalled, and the mukaf in the walled. Misham the hani migli v'hani loy migli is the difference in walled and unwalled, whether it's actually revealed or not. Vani nami migli. So if it has a wall of an ocean, it's called revealed. It's not walled. Misham the hani migni v'hani loy migni. Maybe the detail with regard to Megillah is that it's guarded. Vani nami migni misham the hani nami migni, and this Tveria is guarded. That's why he wasn't sure. That is the reason why Chizkiah was unsure. So at the end of the day, Chizkiah knew where Tveria was, and he knew that the pasuk says it has the wall of an ocean. And with regard to Yerach Chaima, he knew it was not called a wall. But with regard to Megillah, he wasn't sure what is the detail of a wall. Is the wall something that's revealed, or is the wall something that's guarded? That's why Chizkiah read in both the 14th and the 15th in Tveria. We'll pick it up from Ravasi.